Good morning, everyone. This is John with Gun.Deals, and today we are going to be taking a look at probably the most expensive red dot currently on the market, well, other than the SIG Romeo 9T. This is the Aimpoint Comp M5, which actually, in comparison to the Romeo 9T, is a bit of a bargain, coming in at just under 1,000 bones, which is going to sound ridiculous to most of you, and to me as well. But before we get into that, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe, as that is free and does help us quite a bit. And go ahead and comment "Thanks, Andrew" in the comments down below for sending this Comp M5 out for me to review. Now, full disclosure, as I just mentioned, I did not pay for this with my own money. This was sent in by Andrew Vachon, actually sitting on top of the Hydra mount that you sit behind me, but I put it on something a little bit more reasonable, like a Geissele 193. Now, Aimpoint, if you're not aware, has a pretty legendary track record when it comes to red dots. They're kind of the premier military-focused brand, if that makes sense. The Aimpoint T2 and its predecessor, the T1, are probably the most prolific red dots out there. Then just behind those, you have the Comp M4, and what we have here, the Comp M5. Now, getting into basics, fortunately, the Comp M5 does share the same footprint as the T1, T2, which means that you can find almost an infinite amount of different heights and types of mounts for the optic. It is slightly bigger, and I do mean slightly bigger. I believe the window is something like 2 millimeters larger, which might help some people. It might be a slight boost if you like a little bit larger windows. The main difference is going to be the battery. This is a single AAA battery and a rotary dial on the side for adjusting your illumination rather than a 2032. In terms of size and weight, while again it is similar to the T2, it does have that big battery tray tumor hanging off the side. Weight comes in at about 5 ounces, not including the mount. In terms of controls, we have exposed windage and elevation, though they are protected and recessed into the protective turret, so they shouldn't accidentally get bumped, and you can adjust them with just about anything you can find. In terms of our illumination controls, we simply have a rotary dial at the back of the optic. You very nicely have 4 night vision settings, which is more than most optics will provide, and then you have 6 daylight settings. Now, what that means is that with the very good glass, which we'll get into, means that this is one of the top tier night vision optics on the market. If not the pinnacle, probably still the EOTechs are going to take that crown, but it's very good and gives you enough brightness settings for most environments for your passive aiming nerds out there. In terms of its daylight settings, you have 6, which is lower than most optics, but realistically, you're only going to need 2 or 3 to begin with. I've heard some people claim that the Aimpoint Comp M5 doesn't get bright enough for them, and maybe that is an issue with certain models if they had some sort of quality control issues or illumination issues, something like that. For me personally, in direct sunlight where I live, at the max setting, it is more than bright enough, and so I usually have it set 1 below max, though I could see maybe if you're out in the desert of Utah or in some really rocky, bright, reflective environments where you might want a little bit of extra illumination, which again on the T2, you never have that problem. But before we get to the other major problem of the optic, it does come with flip-up caps, which is nice for a $1,000 optic. In terms of glass quality, clarity, light transmission, it's all very, very good. There's very little warp, there's very little magnification, there's very little color shift. The 2 MOA dot looks very good. Battery life is rated at 50,000 hours of constant use, so not 50,000 hours that's comboed with an auto on, auto off system. It is quite literally 50,000 hours of runtime that they rate these bad boys for, which again, from what I've heard, is one of the few optics, Aimpoint is that can actually reach that 50,000 hours of life, although most people are probably preemptively changing their batteries about once a year, maybe every other year if they're feeling a little bit frisky. Before we get to the performance aspect of the optic, which should be pretty obvious at this point, we are going to talk about the major downside, and that is simply the price tag. These are sitting without a mount at a little bit under $1,000 Renos, which is way too much money for just about any red dot out there. I would wager even the Romeo 9T at $3,000 is drastically overpriced for the performance that it offers. Although at least in the 9T's case, you can make the argument that it is unique, being a dual emitter, dual turret, dual red dot slapped into a singular body. So it is at least unique for that price tag, whereas this kind of does generic dot things, but for a pretty exorbitant fee. And that's one of the main problems with Aimpoint as a brand, is that there has been very little innovation when it comes to their rifle dots. The prices stay incredibly high, and the performance, while good and the reliability also very good, it's not particularly exciting in the year of our Lord 2025. Keep in mind that this is purely from a value perspective, so if you're somebody who has a ridiculous amount of disposable income and doesn't care about cost, well, and you simply want the best, well, a Comp M5 isn't a bad way to go. And if I had to spend $1,000 on a dot, gun to my head, well, Comp M5 would probably be a toss-up between that and the T2. Maybe I take the Comp M5 because I simply like the battery a little bit more. Now, when we talk about performance, it's not that it does anything bad. In fact, it does everything quite well. It's extremely durable. The glass is very good. The dot looks good. The battery is good. The ruggedness, the reliability is there. You can dive with it up to 150 feet if you're so inclined to do so with your rifle and red dot. Putting cost aside from purely a performance or a duty perspective, or if you're, outfitting your guys with whatever optic you want that's going to be the best for whatever you're doing, well, maybe it's more attractive for that. For the average person decking out their PSA Freedom upper, dropping 1,000 bones on a Comp M5, probably not a particularly attractive proposition. But maybe you just like the idea of having a optic that is more durable than the rest of your rifle. And in this case with the BRN 180, where it has started to have some very funny failures to eject every now and again, whether suppressed or unsuppressed, well, I think the Aimpoint is probably going to outlive several of them. And that's about it for the Comp M5. It's not a particularly exciting product to talk about because it's overpriced for what it does, but it does an exceptional job, so I'm not really sure if you can complain about the performance. I guess it's like calling a Glock overpriced or calling a Colt M4, back in the day a Colt M4, overpriced when it's simple and basic and gets the job done, does everything it's supposed to do, and that's about it. But then the question I pose to you, dear viewer, is that value proposition exciting enough? Is that performance exciting enough in 2025 when so many flashier, cheaper options exist that technically do more things on paper, even if they maybe don't execute all of those to the same level? But with all that out of the way, gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. Peace off.